Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me, astrologer Patrick Arundell. Today I'm going to do a deep dive into the blue moon of the 31st of October in the sign of Taurus at 2:49 p.m. BST, so that's Universal Central Time. Now this event is particularly dramatic because not only is it the second full moon of the month, the other was on the first day in the sign of Aries. We also have, of course, Halloween, and this particular full moon combines with the erratic energy of Uranus. So that's really the overview of where we are. Now, what I'm going to do is describe the event in wider detail, so not just focusing on the blue moon itself, and then I'm going to give you your individual zodiac sign forecast, so please stay with me. Now, if you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'd be honoured if you did so now. Please also check out my year 2021 personal horoscope special offer package. You can get the rest of this year free on your forecast, all of 21, your character analysis, 30% off. This is totally based on your individual birth data of time, date and place of birth. So it's unique to you and will give you searing insights that can guide you in the months ahead. But here we are. You can see on the screen the full moon. Now, this full moon, of course, opposes the sun in the deep and passionate sign of Scorpio. Now, scorpionic energy is very much to do with transformation. It can be about things that are going to make way. But we also have the modern ruler of Scorpio, Pluto, in a very close alliance with Jupiter. And they're in the sign of Capricorn, as they have been all year. And of course, more recently, they've been in conflict with Mars, the modern ruler of Scorpio, although that's inverted back in its retrograde to such a degree that it's not agitating those planets in Capricorn anymore. But I think the energy that has been washing around celestially in the last couple of weeks has likely increased COVID wherever we are in the world, unless there's been very strict management of it. And of course, some countries have been very successful in doing that. Others have found it much more complex. So what we've got as we come into the end of this month and we create the stage for the first 2 weeks of November, which this full moon period will influence, I think is the economic reality of the fallout from COVID. But we're also going to see the potential for increased impact of the disease, I feel. And it's interesting because you can see on the screen that the ascendant for this particular event is Pisces, and it is conjunct Neptune, which is very much to do with things shifting, leaking, gases, invisible substances, disease potentially. And I think that we are reaching the high point of the epidemic, and I think it really is going to be a critical phase in this next 2-week period. Now, full moons obviously bring into the open things that we do need to grapple with. So I think that that can mean, because of the role of Uranus, breaking free of something that's not working for us, and that could be an intimate relationship. But the way this happens could come about quite suddenly because Uranus energy moves quickly. Then again, it can be the opposite. It can be a very compulsive attraction to a person, which happens across the second, 8th house axis, which is going to affect us all. So the sign of Taurus is the second sign of the zodiac, and that's where the full moon occurs. On the other side of the heavens where the sun is, that's the 8th house, as we look at it as the overall zodiac. Now, the thing about Uranus conjunct moon energy is it's quite unstable. It doesn't mean to say that's necessarily a bad thing. For example, the moon, of course, in the sign of Taurus is exalted. It likes being here, but Uranus is in its full, so we have a contradiction there. But I feel that generally Taurus energy is about consistency, and it's about continuity. Because of the fixed nature of Taurus, it's about keeping things as they are. And I think Uranus in this sign sees a kind of push and pull between what we want to keep consuming, which is very Taurian, and what the impact of that is potentially on the planet, which is also Taurus. So we can have an opportunity to rethink some things. So if your financial picture is impacted by COVID, one of the things you can do is think about how you can change your everyday approach to resources. So that means conserving, cooking things from scratch, using less consumer goods. It could mean recycling or upcycling goods, which could actually turn out to be really engaging and great fun, but also save quite a lot of money. But if the impact, the financial impact of this situation is really hitting home, try to think outside the box about how you can counter this. And that may mean being much more dependent on your own resources to be much more innovative, much more flexible, and not just assuming that things will just run as they always have, because this new reality that we keep talking about is going to be a feature, not just because of COVID, I don't feel. It is because of the arrival of Saturn and Jupiter in the sign of Aquarius, which happens on the 17th and 20th of December, and they come together in that awesome combination, the conjunction on the 21st on the winter solstice for the first time since 1405. It's that rare. So we are going to see a big shift in the way that we all live, and some of that can be much more to do with community, with connections, with networking, and some of it can be more isolating, for example home working. And there can be a kind of detachment which isn't necessarily easy. And then, of course, we're dealing with all those things like robotics, artificial automation, and artificial intelligence, and automation. So I think in a relationship context, this full moon could bring some kind of emotional reality into the open that has been hidden, and it could be around a sexual relationship. So we could see revelations around famous people. It could be about tax evasion. That can come into the open. It could be around people separating, where it's a big shock to those concerned, or it could be people coming together in an unexpected way as well. And then in terms of resources, yes, I do feel that the impact of COVID is going to be felt by many of us around the globe. So we all have to try and be as flexible as possible in how we respond to this. And I do think in terms of COVID, because of Jupiter, which is about international affairs, and it is about growth, but of course in Capricorn it's in its full, and Pluto can be about death. And of course we have the Sun in the sign of potential transformation, Scorpio. So I do feel we're going to see a peak in the infection rate of COVID, especially with that ascendant in Pisces combining with Neptune. But we are all seeing the way forward. We can see how we may have to adapt and flex in order to do things differently, and that's where Uranus can be a very good thing. Also, for some people, it may be sudden decisions around property matters, sudden decisions around financial spending. It could be a sudden desire to spend money, but in a way that can be a good way. So it could be like using some pension money creatively. It could be about reinvesting money that isn't working because of the way the stock market has changed in a new, more flexible way. So there are always opportunities when we have a full moon, but generally I think some surprise revelations on this Halloween full moon are going to come into the open. This can also be known as the Hunter moon. I think that's not a particularly nice concept to think of. I mean, obviously there was a time, and there may be still for some people in very extreme parts, remote parts of the world, where they have to do that to survive. And personally, I have respect for that. But when it's hunting for pleasure, I find that absolutely despicable, to be quite honest. So I'm not sure I'm particularly comfortable with the phrase Hunter moon, but it's certainly a Halloween. So we're going beyond the veil. It is in Taurus, which is about resources, but also about our self-worth. And it is being challenged by the change that comes with Scorpio, transformation, whether we like it or not. Some of that could be, unfortunately, loss of life. I have to say that, but also an opportunity to transform. And just finally, in this particular chart, we also have Mercury and Venus in the sign of Libra, which, like Taurus, is ruled by Venus. So Venus is in its home zone, or one of its two home zones in Libra. It's not conjunct Mercury, but it is in the 7th house of this particular chart. And the 7th house is very Libran in its context. So the more we can interact diplomatically with people. So many people are taking very polarized positions, like they won't wear masks, they won't do this, they will do that. There's a lot of very strident opinions. Rather than coming together, we all need to compromise a little bit. And this energy in Libra is pushing that, but it is true that Mercury is being compromised by Saturn. So even if we try to be very reasonable, there are still going to be people trying to hold on to the old way, or being very orthodox in their approach, or very inflexible, or wanting to be very dominating. But if we keep the diplomacy going and we keep the dialogue going, it's going to be so much better than just taking those very separate positions where, you know, we just disagree without really listening. So I think the listening energies of the retreat in Mercury at this stage, it's going to go forwards on the 4th of November, and then it's going to go back into Scorpio on the 11th, and then it comes out of shadow on the 19th, and that's really when we've got a fabulous Scorpio new moon coming in, and I think that's going to be the time when we really see a shift away and hopefully a much more expedient response to COVID, and the hope coming through with the lunar eclipse, which occurs at the end of November in Gemini, and then a stunning solar eclipse on the 14th of December in Sagittarius. So we're getting away from that Capricorn Cancer season. We're getting back to the Sagittarius Gemini axis, which first began on the 30th of May 1984, and that's going to bring a lighter vibe to bear for us all. But for now, please see your individual Zodiac video underneath this one. So Aries, it is very much about resources in a very strident way. You may have to make some snap decisions. Things can be moving very quickly. But if you are someone who's quite entrepreneurial and naturally a risk taker, that may be something that appeals to that side of your nature. But with Mercury, the planet of negotiation and contracts, in retrograde, squaring up with Saturn, Saturn's in your 10th house of success, Mercury in your 7th house of relating, just really be mindful of the small print. Someone may not necessarily be telling you everything you need to know as well. So dig out the facts, and something could come into the open that could surprise you. But this is definitely a time when you may have to be much more flexible about using the different assets you've got, whether those are skills, whether those are experiences, whether they are to do with money or they're to do with valuables that you have. All of these things may need to be moved around and manipulated in a way which helps you to deal with the COVID crisis or your own unique circumstances. Now, Taurus, of course, for you, this particular full moon occurs in your own sign. So this is about individuality. If a relationship isn't working for you, the next 2 weeks are going to be a critical time. And especially if that particular tie has really been bumping along the bottom, because Uranus in your sign has been making you much more conscious of your need to be a free spirit. You're a very committed person. You don't like change without good reason. But if something has become so stupefyingly dull and you're just not being fed in terms of the engagement that you have with a partner, I do feel that you may be thinking about moving to the door marked exit. But ironically, absolutely the opposite can be true if you're single, and someone electrifying can come into your orbit who really switches you on in so many ways. It is true with Mercury in a very precise part of your situation, squaring up with Saturn in your 9th house. Micro-checking any details will be critical over this next 2-week period for you. Now, Gemini, this particular full moon occurs in your 12th house of the psychology of your situation, your subconscious. Because you're a very logical sign, you're ruled by air, Having Uranus in your 12th house has probably made you quite restless and perhaps on edge ever since the middle of May 2018 to the middle of November 18, and from March the 7th, 19. It just depends where you have personal planets in Gemini, but particularly if you have them right at the start of Gemini, I do feel that the impact of the 12th house Uranus placement may be quite keenly felt. It is true that you could argue that there's a semi-sextile if you have planets right at the start of Gemini, which could be enabling, but this is asking you to get much more conscious of your motivations, the shadow side of your nature. And because you like to share your emotions through the prism of your ideas and your personal expression, it's not always easy to join it all together. Now, you do have your ruler Mercury in retrograde at this time, clashing with Saturn, so anything to do with taking risks needs to be approached, particularly around resources, with a great deal of care. You do have Venus, however, in a glorious location, and despite all this electric energy that's around, the tension that this full moon can create, there could be someone who is dancing on your senses, showing some kind of interest in you, or you're quietly aware of them. Watch out for someone's body language. They may not tell you. Things can be very secretive in the 12th house. Then again, at work, you may find suddenly that someone has got an angle against you, but they won't necessarily tell you themselves. You could get to hear about it through a third party. Someone may be actually a bit two-faced or dishonest. So when it comes to balancing the physical side of your life, the 6th house, where the sun in Scorpio is, just be mindful of the things that are not necessarily always obvious. And if you do feel a bit stressed out, don't just work on the physical elements of that, early nights, eating the right thing, drinking lots of water. Also embrace the more vulnerable side of your nature. Don't be hung up about this. It's okay to be vulnerable. Embrace that. Let some past hurts go if you need to. Release, which is what a full moon's about. If you need to cry, do it. It's the healthiest thing you could possibly do. Now, Cancer, for you, this full moon occurs in your sector of friendship, but also your future direction in life. And I have to say, it's possible that a lot of options are mounting up, and that is very exciting. But of course, keeping up with all the energy may be a task in itself. You do have Mercury in retrograde in your 4th house of home and emotion, squaring with Saturn that's in your sector of relating. So a family matter could be a bit tense, but when it comes to communication within the family, don't immediately think the worst. Just try to be as constructive as possible. You do have Venus in a fabulous location, which could see you wanting to improve where you're living in some kind of shape or form. But generally, your future plans may be quite changeable. And if you're someone who likes a lot of continuity, that can be unsettling. If you're someone who's really up for a big change, or you're really shifting your priorities at this time in your life, which wouldn't be a surprise over the last couple of years, you still have Mars high in the sky. It is retrograde, which is giving you more confidence. But you just need to apply that extra confidence in a way which brings people with you rather than kind of tells them how it will be, which can create resistance. But generally speaking, I think you can be attracted to much more unusual people. Don't be surprised if you find yourself linking more with Aquarius folk at this time, or showing a greater interest in astrology. Now, Leo, this full moon occurs in your sector of work, success, goals, and ambitions. And I think it's going to be difficult, even if you're a deeply private person, to disguise your true feelings, because the chances are they're going to come to the surface, and perhaps in an unexpected way. Any work pressures can have a big impact on your home life, your emotional serenity, and finding a balance between the two, the classic work-life balance, is going to be a real feature of the next couple of weeks. And you still have that really big dimension in your situation of wanting to change the everyday reality into something that's more exciting, but finding a way that you can still fulfill your obligations. That means that you're being honourable, but at the same time you are embracing a more adventurous lifestyle. Something's changing about your role. This could see a new job. It could see you breaking away from something that perhaps even if you don't make the final choice, maybe it is to do with COVID, and that is challenging for you. But a change can honestly be so good for you. You don't often like these transitions because you are a fixed sign. And you often like to work closely with someone else. But this could be a time that you need to be much bolder about asserting what your future direction in terms of your goals and ambitions is really going to be. Now for you, Virgo, this full moon occurs in your sector of freedom. What's not to like? Well, if you're someone who's very welded to routines, if you're very precise in your approach, which often is the case, you like to be of service to others, but you're doing something that really has completely lost its attraction, that is going to be a key thing for you over the next couple of weeks. And because Mercury and Venus are in your second solar house and Mercury is in retrograde, you may be thinking about how you could make a transition but make it pay, which is entirely understandable. But don't let your need for order pulverize your passion or your desire to embrace a much more exciting and freer future. And that may mean breaking away from something that only recently seemed incredibly important to your sense of security and certainty. I think you're being challenged to step outside your comfort zone in a big way. And there could also still be quite a passionate attraction to somebody. There may not be complete availability between one of you, but I feel it is possible that sexually someone is making your pulse race quicker, but you may feel a bit boxed in about what next step to take. So at the moment, keeping your options open may be something that makes a lot of sense to you. Now for you, Libra, this full moon occurs in a sector of transformation. So very much in keeping with the energies of Scorpio, where the sun is. But of course, Uranus is in this location. So this may mean using your resources, your longer term resources, anything to do with shares, pensions, savings, investments, property, in a more flexible and enlightened way. And if you are, you could actually capitalize on this full moon really skillfully. Also, Mars is in your sector of relating still going backwards pretty well till the middle of November, when things will ease furthermore, but it has inverted inside the posse in Capricorn. So I think the pressure has lessened around that home and emotional matter, or has it? Because of course Mercury is retrograde, it's squaring up with the ugly and rather oppressive energies of Saturn. So if someone's not recognizing your need to be an individual, to flourish, to develop your creativity and your unique identity, their energy, their kind of cold water over your enthusiasm energy really could get your goat. But as I've been saying to you for some while, it's down to you to push back. And the 8th house can be about endings. Uranus can be about sudden endings. So if something isn't working for you, push back, assert yourself. You're a cardinal sign. You can do it. Now for you, Scorpio, obviously the sun's in your sign, so the pivot on this full moon is in your sector of relating. But interestingly, it may be you who's quite focused on what you're wanting to do for yourself individually, and also because you've got Venus and Mercury in your 12th house, you may be feeling a little bit inward, like I can almost feel your hands on your head, sort of you want to do it your way, you want to keep your focus on your plans, good for you, but you're thinking a little bit inside of yourself. And I feel that the Uranus influenced full moon could mean that someone's going to surprise you. They're going to step forward and tell you something that makes you aware of some attitude you have, some approach you have that you're not so conscious of. It may be a little bit challenging this, but try to take it on the chin, because the Uranus opposition with the sun can bring about suddenness, and it can bring about appointedness. And of course, you can be quite direct when it comes to other people. You can be much more private about your own feelings, but you can be quite blunt. I think someone may be about to be blunt with you, but it could be an admirer is about to tell you how much they fancy you. So just don't spend too much time thinking inwards. Keep looking outwards and being observant of what's going on around you. Now, Sagittarius, of course, Uranus now has been in your sector of work, obligations, responsibilities, order for some time, since full time, if you like, in this particular phase through the sign of Taurus, since the 7th of April 2019. So you realise that things are changing, and your need for freedom, which is absolutely paramount, is being challenged if you want to make the money, where you have the cluster of energy in Capricorn, the second house. And that's where you've really felt the pinch, because if you wanted to keep everything as it was pre-Saturn in Capricorn, which it started in the middle of December 2017, so really since the start of 2018, I think some kind of income source has dried up for you, and you may have also felt less confident about your self-worth, quite honestly. So what Uranus is doing is saying, to reinvigorate your earnings, you need to move, you need to shift what you're doing into something that's more in keeping with the person you are now, not that person you used to be a couple of years ago, because we all have the right to keep changing. So this Uranus conjunction with the moon, I think it really is saying that something's going to change around your work, your everyday life, your everyday structure, and if you just go with it, it can be a good thing. The problem is, because the sun's in your 12th house of sensitivities, of vulnerabilities, you may resist it initially, but it is coming. And once you get that glorious solar eclipse in your sign on the 14th of December, the Saturn and Jupiter, your ruler, moving into Aquarius, together on the 21st, coming together in the conjunction on the 21st, the winter solstice. That's going to be another green light, but you also have Venus for the second half of December in your sign. So lots of good stuff's coming in December, but for now, if you resist, the more painful it's going to be. Now, Capricorn, of course, Uranus in your 5th house has been making you more conscious of your flair, your creativity, your talent, but also where you're bored. And if you're bored in a love relationship, this full moon is really going to test you, because the sun's in the part of your situation to do with your future. Every minute we're with someone who doesn't really nurture and stimulate us, we're not free and available to meet someone who can. So it's a kind of double waste of time. But because you like security a lot, and you also like to know where you stand, and if there is a power structure set up which suits you in some kind of way, you may be reluctant to change that. Now, you have Mercury in retrograde in your 10th house of your worldly interactions, along with Venus. Someone influential can put in a good word for you in the next few weeks, Capricorn, but equally, because Mercury is squaring with Saturn, if you do feel inhibited in what you're doing in your work, and it in itself, it's not very creative, it's not very fulfilling, which is coming from that 5th house energy of Uranus, this could really give you a few kind of anxious moments. You may feel your confidence isn't quite flowing. Trust in the process that Uranus is giving you, this opportunity to transform your life, but you can't kind of stay as you are. You can't cherry pick. It's going to be a kind of all or nothing situation, I feel, with Uranus. And even if you resist it on this particular pass, because we've got a big set of eclipses coming in over the next few years, emphasizing your 12th and 6th houses, resistance may be futile. Eventually, a change is coming for you, I feel. So you may decide to drive the process, which is what the full moon gives you the opportunity to do, because it is a chance for joy. But it must come from liberating yourself from the things that bring you nothing but dullness, if dullness is a word. So embrace excitement at every turn where you possibly can. Now, Aquarius, of course, Uranus is your modern ruling planet. It's the planet of truth. It's obviously the co-regent of Aquarius, and it's very much a progressive influence. But in the 4th house, the chances are you're changing something at home, whether it's the decor, moving the furniture around, decluttering, recycling clothes to charity shops, or you're thinking of adapting where you live, a new bathroom, new kitchen, an extension, or perhaps potentially you're thinking of moving altogether. All those things are possible. But if there is change going on at home, you have to make it work around your work. So there's a balancing act to be achieved over the next couple of weeks. Fortunately, Venus is in a glorious location for you. Mercury is, but is in retrograde and is challenged by your traditional ruler of Saturn. So it's possible that an old worry, something about the past, could be haunting you a little bit and stopping you feel as uninhibited as you could be. So try not to sweep it away. A worry is a worry, and it's seated somewhere deep within us. Don't dismiss it. Try to hold it. Try to understand it. Share it with someone that you can really trust. Create some kind of a ventilation or extra light or knowledge on any worry which is digging away deep within your soul, because if there is one there, it could be emphasized by that square between Mercury and Saturn. And because the restlessness that's going around a home life, that could be making you feel a little on edge as well. But somehow or another, there does seem to be some change in the works. Perhaps it's a change about your own emotional outlook, your relationship, your own emotions. That change can be awesomely positive for you. Which brings us to last and most definitely not least, the glorious sign of Pisces, where my draconic ascendant is and Elisa's midpoint. So Pisces energy is something I love, as you know. So Pisces, this particular full moon is in a most electric a place of your situation. If you love technology, you'll be on fire the next couple of weeks. I must say, not literally, proverbially. You'll really be switched on to lots of exciting new concepts, flexing, thinking about how you can change things. If you are wanting to apply for a job or retrain in an area where knowledge is important, but it is about modern technologies, this is a prime time to do it over the next couple of weeks. You also may have someone confront you with an essential truth, the 9th house of Scorpio. You do have Mercury and Venus in the part of your horoscope that's to do with longer term resources. And it is true that Mercury is being challenged by Saturn. So not a great time to take big risks with your long-term capital. And also group situations. I wouldn't be too quick to join up with a get-rich-quick scheme, or if a friend has got a wonderful idea to make $1 million, although it may be a good idea and they may be a good friend, I actually feel keeping business and pleasure apart, unless you're absolutely totally compelled that it is a sound idea, is going to be a very sensible thing to do. But for you, there is going to be a lot of restlessness at this time. You may feel a little on the edge, and you do have that ascendant in your sign on this full moon, conjunct your traditional ruler of Neptune. So I feel if you're a little bit unsure about your identity or what you should do about a situation, just keep re-informing yourself. More and more facts. Okay, you could get a bit overloaded, but generally speaking, with Uranus, some kind of revelation is going to come into the open to help you. So that concludes the Zodiac sign forecast from Aries through to Pisces. I wish you well for this glorious Halloween full moon, blue moon in the sign of Taurus, conjunct Uranus. And remember, if you want to check out your year 21 personal horoscope package, where you get the rest of this year's forecast for free, all of next year, your character analysis, 30% off, based on your unique birth data, totally unique to you, get searing insights of what's coming up for you, please see the link beneath this video. But for now, stay safe, take care, good luck, and goodbye.